This debate is as old as the nation itself, rooted in the earliest days of American history. From the time of the Founding Fathers, questions about who should have access to firearms and for what purpose have shaped the American experience. For many Americans, the right to own a firearm is more than just a legal matter, it's a deeply personal issue. It represents self-reliance, family traditions like hunting, and a sense of security. For some, it's a way of life passed down through generations, and a symbol of freedom that is fiercely protected. The Second Amendment is not just a line of text in the Constitution. For millions, it's a cornerstone of liberty, and a fundamental right that defines what it means to be American. It's a source of pride and a rallying cry for those who believe in limited government and personal responsibility. Yet, for others, the widespread availability of firearms is seen as a direct threat to public safety. They point to the tragic statistics: mass shootings, accidental deaths, and gun violence that devastate families and communities. For them, the cost of easy access to guns is measured in lives lost and communities forever changed. These Americans advocate for stronger laws and regulations, believing that common-sense measures, like background checks and restrictions on certain weapons, can save lives without infringing on the rights of responsible gun owners. They see regulation as a way to protect children, schools, and public spaces from senseless violence. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, are often called upon to interpret these rights and responsibilities in a modern context. Their decisions can have far-reaching consequences, shaping the laws that govern gun ownership and use for generations to come. Each ruling has the potential to shift the delicate balance between individual rights and collective safety, making every case significant not just for those directly involved but for the entire nation. The legal landscape is constantly evolving as new challenges and technologies emerge. The recent Supreme Court decision on so-called ghost guns, untraceable firearms that can be assembled at home, marks a pivotal moment in this ongoing debate. As technology changes the way guns are made and obtained, the nation continues to grapple with how best to protect both individual freedoms and public safety, ensuring that the conversation over guns in America endures into the future. In a rare show of unity, the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous decision in Bondi v. Vanderstock in March 2025. The case asked, does a kit that can easily become a working firearm count as a firearm under federal law? The answer, yes. The ATF had updated its rules to require that kits for ghost guns be treated like traditional firearms, serial numbers, background checks, and all. Lower courts struck down the rule, but the Supreme Court reversed them, upholding the ATF's authority. The justices agreed that if a product is designed to become a gun, it should be regulated as one from the start. This was a major victory for advocates of stronger gun laws and a clear message that the law must keep pace with technology. Ghost guns are privately assembled firearms, built by individuals rather than licensed manufacturers. Unlike traditional guns, which are produced in factories and tracked through serial numbers, ghost guns are made at home, often in garages or workshops, using parts that can be purchased by almost anyone. These firearms are often created from kits bought online or at gun shows, where buyers can select from a wide variety of models and components. The process is surprisingly accessible, requiring little more than a credit card and an internet connection. What sets ghost guns apart is that they lack serial numbers, making them virtually untraceable. This anonymity is a major concern for law enforcement, as it allows people who are legally barred from owning firearms to obtain them without detection. The kits typically include all the parts needed to build a fully functional firearm, from the barrel and slide to the trigger and magazine. Everything arrives in a box, ready for assembly. The key component is an unfinished frame or receiver, which is the part that would normally be regulated if it were complete. Because these parts are sold in an incomplete state, they have not been classified as firearms under previous federal law. Previously, these unfinished parts weren't legally considered firearms, so kits could be sold without background checks or records. This loophole meant that anyone, regardless of criminal history or age, could buy the parts and build a gun with no oversight. With simple tools like drills and files and step-by-step online guides or videos, almost anyone could assemble a working gun at home, even with little technical experience. Law enforcement agencies across the country have reported a surge in ghost guns recovered at crime scenes. The rise of these untraceable weapons has complicated criminal investigations and contributed to the growth of illegal gun markets. The Supreme Court case addressed whether this loophole should remain or if unfinished gun parts should be regulated like completed firearms. Gun control advocates argued these kits were intentionally designed to evade the law, making it too easy for dangerous individuals to get guns without background checks or records. Opponents, however, said these kits are simply parts for hobbyists and enthusiasts who enjoy building firearms as a legal pastime, and that new regulations would unfairly target law-abiding citizens. The court's decision would determine if this source of untraceable guns would be shut down, or if the right to build firearms at home would remain protected under current law. The outcome could reshape how guns are bought, sold, and tracked in America for years to come. The Supreme Court's ruling redefines the legal landscape for gun-making kits in the U.S. frames, and receivers in these kits are now classified as firearms, subject to all federal laws. Buyers must undergo background checks and purchase through licensed dealers. Manufacturers must engrave serial numbers on each frame or receiver before sale. This allows law enforcement to trace guns used in crimes, a vital tool for investigations. The ruling closes a long-exploited loophole, clarifying that intent and design matter. Building a gun from a kit is now regulated like buying a finished firearm. For citizens, it means more oversight and documentation, aligning with existing gun laws. The Supreme Court's decision is already impacting communities and law enforcement. Cities like Los Angeles saw a sharp drop in ghost guns recovered at crime scenes after the ATF rule took effect. The ruling gives police a permanent tool to combat untraceable firearms and makes investigations safer. Gun shops now must treat kits like regular firearms, background checks, serial numbers, and record keeping. For hobbyists, building guns remains legal but now requires following the same rules as buying one. The shift moves the practice from an unregulated hobby to a regulated activity, aiming to prevent criminal misuse. The goal? Keep guns out of the wrong hands while preserving legal ownership. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision has sparked strong reactions on both sides of the gun debate. Supporters, including gun control groups and law enforcement, call it a common-sense move that closes a dangerous loophole. They argue it saves lives by keeping untraceable guns from criminals without taking rights from law-abiding citizens. Opponents, including gun rights groups and kit manufacturers, claim the ATF overstepped its authority and that the ruling burdens hobbyists. They see it as a threat to tradition and a step toward eroding Second Amendment rights. Some vow to keep fighting the regulations in court or through Congress. The decision highlights the ongoing tension between public safety and individual freedom. The Supreme Court's recent ruling on ghost guns marks a significant turning point in the ongoing story of American gun regulation. For years, so-called ghost guns, firearms assembled from kits or parts, often lacking serial numbers, have existed in a legal gray area, making them difficult to trace and regulate. This decision signals a new era, where the highest court in the land has weighed in on how these weapons should be treated under federal law. By upholding the ATF's rule, the court has effectively closed a major loophole, bringing previously untraceable gun kits under the same federal oversight as traditional firearms. This means that kits and parts used to build guns at home are now subject to the same regulations as fully assembled weapons, including requirements for background checks and serial numbers. Now, serial numbers and background checks are mandatory for these kits, making it much harder for prohibited individuals, such as felons or those with restraining orders, to obtain guns through this once unregulated channel. This step is seen by many as a crucial move to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands. The decision arms law enforcement with new tools to track and investigate gun crimes, potentially making communities safer. However, the broader debate over gun rights and regulation is far from settled. Across the country, passionate voices on both sides continue to shape the conversation. The unanimous verdict from the justices demonstrates that, even on deeply divisive issues like gun control, there is room for consensus and common ground. This rare agreement may inspire further bipartisan efforts to address gun violence and public safety. Still, the ruling is likely to spark new legal and legislative battles. Gun rights groups may challenge the decision in court or push for changes in Congress, while gun safety advocates will continue to press for even stronger reforms to address the evolving threats posed by modern firearms. As technology advances, with innovations like 3D printed guns and increasingly sophisticated home assembly kits, the legal landscape will keep evolving. Lawmakers, courts, and communities will need to adapt to these changes to ensure public safety. This Supreme Court ruling isn't the final word on gun regulation in America. Instead, it represents a pivotal chapter in the nation's ongoing and often contentious conversation about guns, rights, and safety. a conversation that will continue to shape the country's future for years to come.